Hi, thanks for watching this first episode of Unraveling Magic. This is actually cut from our podcast episode on the Commander deck building template, but we figured it would be good to have our first video be on how to build a Commander deck. What this is intended to be is like a how-to series on our YouTube channel. So thanks for watching. All right, so today we're going to be talking about the MTG Place, so our Commander deck building guide, because I know some of you are new out there, might not know how to build a Commander deck. First of all, James, you want to give a brief description of what Commander is, in case people don't know?
All right, so Commander, as if you've watched our podcast before in the past, is our main format that we play. It's the best group format that Magic has. So basically, you all have one big deck of 99 cards with one commander as your 100th card, or two if it's a partner, so that'll be 98 and then two commanders. And then all the 99 cards or 100 cards altogether are singletons. So that means you have to play one of each type of card, or one of each card, unless it's basic lands. Unlike regular Magic, where you can play four of each. And then generally you take all, find some way to kind of synergize them all together and you make a deck. So.
Yep. Like you said, 100 cards, including the commander or your partners. So we're going to go through some categories here. But before we do that, so if you were going to build a new deck, what's the first thing you like to do?
First thing I want to do is probably find a theme for what I want. So what do I want the deck to do? And generally that would be finding what commander you want to play, because your commander is basically going to justify or going to kind of decide what you're going to be doing.
Yeah, a lot of the time. Like if your commander is all about drawing cards, then you're going to probably want to have a theme of drawing cards.
And you're probably going to want to play blue.
Yeah, if your commander is about making tokens, you're probably going to want a lot of tokens.
Yep.
So I'm going to get into some categories where we break it down a little bit here. Cards can obviously overlap and be in multiple categories. Otherwise, you would have too many cards, right? Like you couldn't fit all these in your deck. So cards like Great Henge, because the categories we broke it down to is lands, mana ramp, draw spells, removal, board wipes, tutors, win the game cards. And cards like Great Henge would count as both card draw and mana ramp.
Yep, it does both. It's just a good card in general, so that's why it's worth however much money it is.
Yeah, so your number one card, your first card, or your first and second card would be your commanders. If you have partners, it'll be two, otherwise one.
Yep.
With backgrounds, I guess you can have a commander and a background.
Yeah, backgrounds definitely makes things interesting for sure.
Basically, like having a partner commander.
Yeah.
So that's going to be your first two cards. So you're going to figure that out. Then for lands, I do usually wait to the end to figure this out based on what colors I've played in the deck to figure out what my mana fixing wants to be. But I usually play about 36 lands in the deck.
You generally want it to be about a third of your deck. Again, it depends on what you're doing. If you're a more aggro deck, you can probably get away with a little less than that. Because generally you're going to be, have a smaller curve, so you don't have to worry about bombs as much or something like that. Or if you're more of a single or dual color deck, you don't have to worry as much about fixing or filtering mana and whatnot. You're probably going to be okay. You're not going to get too mana screwed. But if you're playing something very complex like Control or a 5-color deck or something like that, you're going to need a lot more lands and you're going to need a lot of filter, utility, all that other good stuff to go with it.
So then it
has to work.
Then you might want to go up to 40 even, maybe.
Yep.
Or 30.
Yeah, you can probably hit 40.
Yeah, but as a general rule, 36 lands is where I start. And then if I might play test a little bit, see, I need a couple more lands, I don't. I also tend to like to play a lot of lands that don't come in tapped if possible, just because I like my decks to be faster.
Yeah, some of those lands are very warranted because they can be very, very good, but too many of them definitely sucks.
Yeah, you don't want too many non-basic lands that only add colorless. Like you want to be able to add all your colors.
Yes.
And then the next thing is 25 to 30 cards in your deck are going to be your deck plan. So, like, if you have a tribal deck, you would want like at least 25 cards that are all that tribe. If you have a spells matter deck, so you're going to want 25, instants or sorceries.
Yep.
So you usually want 25 to 30 cards that are in your deck plan and synergize with your deck.
Yeah, you definitely, and then a good way to figure that out is you can go on to, there's a lot of websites that'll help, like EDHREC is the one that I use
a good one.
a lot, and it will actually tell you like how well, like you can type in like the commander that you want to use, and it will tell you what cards synergize with that card. So
yeah, it shows you the most
out.
popular cards played in that deck. Based on synergy and other things. You can also go to Scryfall and do the same thing. You can punch in your commander colors, and it will give you every single card that is in that. And you can even Uber filter. Like if you're like, oh, I only want cards in this color that have an ETB effect, you can do that and see every card in the game.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good resources on the internet for that. So if you don't have a very big, extensive Magic knowledge like we do, that's okay. There's plenty of resources to help you.
Yep. And you can always just, obviously put in what you have too. Like go around, oh, this synergizes, this is, or this is just that color. It's just like because you can play a jank deck and just play big things that win on their own.
I mean, half the time you'll win, honestly, if you have bombs. If they can't deal with it, then,
Then I like to play 10 to 15 mana ramp cards. This counts mana rocks, mana dorks, rampant growths. I never want to play less than 10 though.
One of them will most likely be Arcane Signet because it's very good.
Yeah, and Sol Ring
and Sol Ring will probably be in there, and then probably some other type of Signet card or something like of that sort. That will help you with mana ramp or different types of filter or whatever.
Yeah, and I usually don't like to go less than 10 mana ramp unless you have a way of recycling what you play or your commander ramps.
Right, like if you're playing like a green deck or something, they have like a lot of dorks in it, then you have features that are doing that, so it's not as important. But it depends on what you're doing, basically.
Yeah, same with like if you're playing like a lease, like you can make mana dorks, so then you might be able to go less than 10 if you need space for other stuff, because it itself you always have access to and can get your mana ramp.
Yeah.
But generally you want to have at least 10, 15 if you want to always be able to cast shit.
Yeah, if it's an aggro deck, that might be overkill, but yes, definitely. If you're playing control, you really want that most likely, because generally you're playing more hard stuff to cast.
Yeah, and then usually I want 8 to 10 card draw spells, so 10 is usually on the minimum side, but if you have, like, I play a lot of graveyard recursion decks, so sometimes I'll go down as low as 8.
Yeah, because those basically count as drawn away. So
right, so you want cards that net you at least one card positive into your hand. So like you want to play like divination, like draw 2, because it's replacing itself and getting you one more.
Yeah, brainstorm.
You don't want like things that are just like probe, where you just replace itself. That doesn't. I wouldn't really count that as a card draw spell because it's just like a cantrip.
Yeah, cantrips are different for sure. Something like Ponder can be very good because you can choose between. You can look at the cards and then you can pick what you want, or you can shuffle if it's all garbage, which is also very good.
Yeah, a lot of times enchantments that can be kind of sticky are great here, like Sylvan Library, Phyrexian Arena.
Library is very good for Commander, definitely, because you will almost always proc it. Whereas in a typical format like Legacy or something like that, it's a little harder to do. But Commander, it's very easy to hit.
And then this one is probably higher than a lot of places you see on the internet, but I tend to play 8 to 10 target removal cards just because our play group plays a lot of enchantments, artifacts, annoying lands. So you need.
This definitely depends on your playing group, but yes, it's very necessary for who we play with.
Yeah, so 8 to 10 because you need creature removal, you need enchantment removal, you need artifact removal, you need land removal.
You pretty much need something that removes most types of cards.
Yeah, the more flexible it is, the better.
Like that's why Austere Command is very good because you can choose. Like it's you basically can choose between all of them as you choose 2. And then there's something like planar cleansing, which just destroys everything except for lands, which is good. And then there's even ones that destroy even lands, and like there's all
Yeah,
sorts of.
like Abrupt Decay and what is it? Assassin's Trophy destroys anything.
Yep.
And then there's Anguish Unmaking is any non-land permanent. And
Yep.
then or you could play
Those ones
like the
counter, which is
you
also
could play like the what is it? Wear Tear, Artifact or Enchantment.
I like Wear Tear a lot. It's very cheap and very effective. And it's again you can choose, which is also very good. But yeah, creature removal is by far the most important because you will encounter annoying creatures that will almost always happen sometime in the game. So
Yeah,
Wrath of God, if you're playing white, necessary. Damnation, if you're playing black, very necessary. Any of those, and then from there, like probably enchantments removal will be next, and then maybe a little bit of land destruction. You don't need a ton, but there's some lands out there like Tabernacle that you want to get rid of. Not as often, obviously, but there are some decks that revolve around certain lands, but yeah, creature is definitely number one, then everything else.
yeah, and that leads into our next one. Is I usually play around 2 board wipes, like you said, Damnation or Wrath of God. They'll wipe multiple creatures at once,
Yep.
versus being a targeted single removal thing.
Spot removal is very good too. You will want those as well, but you definitely want your wraths, if you will. Your
So I
glory.
usually play 2, and you can play more if it's beneficial to your strategy. Usually I play low costing ones, like Damnation or Wrath of God. So if I get behind early, I can cast them.
Yeah.
Or late, I can like cast them and still rebuild. Or you want to play ones that are beneficial to you. Like if you're a tokens deck, you might want to destroy all non-tokens.
Exactly. It will definitely depend on what type of deck you're playing. If you're playing a creature-based deck, you probably don't want too many global destruction spells because that hurts you too, generally. Right. So then you probably want more spot removal or something like Austere Command is another one where it's like you can choose, greater than CMC 4, I think is what it is. So then if you're smaller creatures, then you'll be okay. Stuff like that.
Yeah, and then I usually play 1 to 2 tutors, something to search for your win con, you're not getting it, or a card that can help in the current situation. You can run more in your deck if you want it to be super consistent, but then you start getting closer to that CEDH power level where you're just having the same game over and over and over again. And I tend not to care for that, so I usually only put 1 to 2 tutors in there.
Yeah. It depends on what you're playing, of course, but
yeah, like if I'm playing an enchantment deck, I'll play Search for Any Enchantment. Right?
Yeah.
If I'm playing black, I'll play Demonic Tutor. So
yeah, it's just good.
And then usually you want like 3 win to game cards. These are cards that will finish out the game or should win you the game when cast. It can be your combo pieces. If you're like an infinite combo loop, it can be like just a big bomb creature like Crater Hoof or something.
Both one's most green games.
Yeah, so it's just something that like when you cast it, you should win. Usually I play around 3 of those type of cards.
Yep. Basically something that they have to deal with or they will basically lose the game. So, but yeah, you basically when you're planning on building your commander deck, like you obviously want a theme and whatnot around your commanders and whatnot, but you also need to have a way to win. Right, you can't just kind of throw stuff on the field and hope it kills them eventually. Like you need to do something to win the game.
Yeah, and then the last thing I'll do is I'll start going into mana curve with my cards. A good resource for this is to put your deck into Moxfield. It will tell you your mana curve and cost of all your cards. And you can even draw like playtest hands and stuff, and you can edit your deck right on Moxfield. It's kind of cool.
Yep.
Yeah. And then I usually like to have 10 or less cards that cost 6 or more, because having a lot of high costing cards in your deck is going to be hard to do. You're going to need your whole deck's going to have to be ramp other than those that. And then you're not going to do anything until like turn 5, 6.
Right.
So
and again, it depends on like what kind of deck you're playing. If you're playing something like Control, you will have a bigger curve, but then that's why decks that Control play stuff like prisons, play stuff like things that deter people from targeting you because they need extra time to set up.
Yeah. And then a majority of the cards in my deck will cost 3 or less. That's just me personally. I like to have a fast deck. Like if I'm debating between a card that costs 5 and a card that costs 3 that do the same thing, I'm going to choose the one that costs 3 because it costs less and I can play it faster.
Yeah, 3 is kind of the magic number in MTG. There's a reason that like 3 or less is basically the standard for Legacy. That's just what works for running stuff. So yeah, that's a really good rule of thumb. Is anything 3 or under is going to be the majority of your deck most likely, unless you're playing something like Eldrazi or something. Then maybe you'll be a little higher than that, but it depends on the deck, of course. But that's generally what you want. Because if you have stuff that costs more than that, your mana curve gets awkward, and then you run into turns where you're one short or something like that, and then you just can't do anything, and that's always
you definitely want most of your mana ramp and rocks to cost less than 3 too. So the first couple turns you can be ramping on those turns.
Yeah,
like Sol Ring costs 1, Arcane Signet costs 2. 3 costs 1. You might play as Chromatic Lantern, like a 5-color deck.
Yeah. Chrome Lantern is a very good card.
Kodama's Reach, Cultivate, all 3 mana. Rampant Growth is 2 mana.
Yeah, anything that ramps that's above that is a little questionable. So
there's a couple 4-cost ones you can get away with, but usually the one turn 4 you don't want to be doing that.
The one I can think of is Explosive Vegetation. That's because you get 2 lands off of it. But
and that's great in like I play that in Landfall deck or something, or like if I'm gonna be a fast start anyway, like your Elves deck is probably okay because you're gonna have a lot of stuff out anyway.
I mean, it can do it because I'm usually not doing much in the beginning anyway. But that's about as high as I go for something like that. Otherwise, it just gets too awkward to try to do.
And then on average, I usually have 4 to 5 cards in each of the 4 to 5 CMC spots, and they're usually like really good cards. So I'm trying to think of some good ones off the top of my head, but I can't. I mean, Damnation, God's 4, Wrath of God. Yeah. Those are cards that when I cast them, they're really going to help me.
Yeah, like 5 cost cards. Things like Monument's a 5-cost card. That's basically a win con. Let's see, the Titans are 5 or no, I think the Titans are 6. I think there's
Timeless Witness is a good 4-cost because it gets you a creature back, and then when it dies,
you get
another card back when it dies.
A lot of the globals are 4. The commands are 5. It's like Austere Command, Primal Command, all those.
Cryptic and the creatures you play in this spot are usually going to be ones that synergize super well with your deck.
Yeah, that's
kind of like all dragons cost less, or whenever a dragon comes in, do this, or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which goes into some of our other notes. You want to make sure you have synergy in your deck, and you want enablers and payoffs for your strategy. So if you're playing a drawing deck, you want to have cards in there that draw you cards that enables it, and then a payoff, like whenever you draw a card, it deals damage to the opponent.
Yeah, you like what Niv is that does that, right?
Yeah,
something like that, or like in my red white green token deck that I have, not my wrist one, my Tana and Sidar deck. I have like impact tremors, so it's a token deck. So then when I play tokens, they take damage.
Yep.
And also I have
that would be a payoff for your deck, and then the enablers would be the cards that put in a bunch of tokens.
Right, exactly. And then I have like Throne of the God Pharaoh, which is where everything that's tapped also deals damage to people and stuff like that. So you want a reason to be playing your deck.
Yep. And then the other thing is when building your deck, you want to be able to answer the following questions. 1, who's your commander? That's probably the first one you have. 2, what is your deck strategy? Okay, so you need to know the strategy of your deck while you're building it. And 3, how are you going to win the game?
Yep. And outside of your commander, that is also very important because, like I said earlier, you can't just be throwing stuff on the field and hoping that something magical will happen and you'll win. Like you got to have a reason you're doing it.
Right. I mean, unless your goal for the deck is to come in second, then you're playing group hug. Then that's your whole thing.
Right. And group hug is totally a viable deck. Like. Yeah, you help everybody, and then you backstab them at the end. That's what group hug does. Like, oh, you like me? Well, now I'm just going to kill all of you. I'm going to take all your creatures or something like that.
Yep.
That's how Gridpug usually wins. They play Mob Rule. Oops.
Mob Rule. Oh, great.
Or Insurrection, or one of the other cards that does that.
Yeah, and we'll put this whole guide in the show notes so you guys can see it later and reference it if you want.
But yeah, at the end of the day, it's definitely when you're building your deck, you have to consider what it's doing. The theme obviously helps too, because then that'll also help what colors you're doing. Green is good for creatures. White is good for enchantments and also removal. Blue is great for like card draw and control. Red is great for dealing damage. Black is great for destroying things. And then you just kind of do any combination of those, to, put together what you want to do. And then based on if it's aggro, if it's control, if it's like somewhere in the middle, then you kind of decide how many lands you need, how fast you're going to be. If you can, if you're able to ramp a ton, then you can probably get away with a little less land. And then once you go from then, once you have that under your belt, you can kind of figure out what, your numbers are going to be for like what types of cards you need.
Right. And then if you're having trouble, like you're building your deck and like, oh, I want this card in there, and you have the thing where like, oh, I have way too many cards. Well, an option is to cut down on colors, right? So instead of playing a 5-color deck, go down to 3, go down to 2 colors, because there's fewer options then in your cards pool. I mean, it's still a lot, but it's fewer options for what you want versus having multiple options in every color. And that's like, well, which one do I go with? Then it's where you might want to put it into Moxfield or lay it out on a table and be like, okay, I have 5 white cards and only 2 red cards, so I guess I have a red card that does the same thing as this white card. I'll just put a red card version in, so that my colors are even.
And then the other way, you really the ultimate test is playing the deck, because you will learn real fast which cards you like and which cards you don't.
Yep, playtesting the deck is a huge thing. So once you build the deck, you want to playtest it.
Because figure out what you don't. I spent this whole game with this one stupid card that was totally useless in my hands. Like, well, then you take it out because it didn't work. That happens a lot. And yeah, that's when you really know is when you start playing.